At any point you're like, we got to wrap it up, just tell me. It's taped, so we're going to edit it up.
Great.
A little bit different this week on the Fishbowl. Usually I like to be in person talking to my guests 3 feet away from me, but when you get a chance to Skype with George R.R. Martin, obviously of Game of Thrones fame and much more, you do it.
And look, you have a Starbucks cup, just like we did in Game of Thrones.
Hey, we were wondering if you spotted, but we're not going to go there. It says Mad King.
It'll be a little different. We're also not talking Game of Thrones. It's almost like anything but Game of Thrones is what we hit. He's got a lot more going on. He's so interesting. Check it out.
I've been a Giants fan, for a long, long time. I mean, the first game I really remember watching as a kid was the greatest game ever played, where the Giants, so-called greatest game ever played, it really wasn't that great a game, but it was pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Where Johnny Unitas beat the Giants in the last quarter, and one of the hallmarks of the Giants was always great defense. It was the first franchise in the league where the fans actually started cheering defense.
Yeah.
And we had Sam Huff in the middle, the violent world of Sam Huff. Then later, of course, Carl Banks and Leonard Marshall and LT and of course the Super Bowl wins over the Patriots with people like Michael Strahan, O.C. Umenyiora, and Matthias Kiwanuka.
Yeah.
And to see this defense just collapsing and giving up lead after lead is heartbreaking for a Giants fan.
Well, it's got to be tough, but you hedged your bets nicely because you're a Jets fan too, and you grew up in the Joe Namath era, who's one of the original personalities in the NFL. You also grew up in Bayonne, right? And so,
right, Bayonne, New Jersey.
So you have somebody that works on my crew said they're from Bayonne. They said to ask you about the Bayonne Bees. Did you go to were you at the high school of the Bayonne Bees?
No, that was our arch rival. I went to the Catholic high school, Marist.
Oh, okay.
The Royal Knights.
Okay, all right. So,
and,
you got after the Bees.
The big rivalry game every year, we played Bayonne High School, which was the Bees. They were the public high school. And they kicked our ass every year until my senior year. My senior year was a beautiful culmination of high school, the first time Marist ever beat Bayonne.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and one guy you ran into maybe along the way, I was really curious about. When I put 2 and 2 together, I was like, who else do I know from Bayonne? I mean, there's Chuck Wepner, right? I mean, he's iconic. He's adapted on screen. Did you ever meet him, run into him, and do you think they did a good job with him?
I have never met Chuck Wepner.
Yeah.
I certainly know of him. He was very famous, in Bayonne for a while. The Bayonne Bleeder.
Yeah.
And he was the inspiration for Rocky. He fought Muhammad Ali and, never defeated him like Rocky defeated Apollo Creed finally. But
right.
He gave him a much better fight than people thought. And that was what inspired Stallone to write the first Rocky script and all that.
Right. What's the best Rocky movie?
I still think the first one. I mean, some of the later ones are good. But the very fact that they made the second one sort of undercut the first one now.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the first one, the whole point of it is Rocky realizes that he's just not good enough to beat Apollo Creed.
Right.
But he's going to go 15 rounds with him, which nobody else has ever done. And that was basically the Chuck Wepner story.
Right.
In no universe could Chuck Wepner beat Muhammad Ali. But he gave him a much better fight and knocked him down once and gave him a much better fight than anybody expected. And he got satisfaction out of that. And that's what Rocky got out of that first fight, which he lost. But then, I think in the first movie, Rocky Balboa is based on Chuck Wepner.
Right.
In all the later movies, Rocky Balboa is based on Rocky Marciano.
Yeah.
So they made a shift there, and instead of just being a club fighter who has one glorious night, they made him one of the great heavyweight champions of all time, which is a total change in the concept there.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you think about on-screen movie characters and all that, I mean, back in your day, the sports characters were few and far between. I mean, they might have been characters, but the way things are now with the advent of the 24-hour news cycle, and you talk to beat writers and newspaper guys, and they're like, listen, like, I write stories about the box score, but people don't want to hear about it. They want to hear about who these guys are. And I think that's one of the coolest things about sports now is, like, characters develop over time. You got a guy like Tom Brady who comes in and he, like, kind of conquers the Rams, the greatest show on turf, and he's the unsung hero that everybody's rooting for. And now 15 years later, he's the arch nemesis of everybody. You got Steph Curry going through that right now. He was a fan favorite, non-threatening. Now he's getting shots taken at him. Guys like KD, who's become a villain, but I think he's misunderstood, and some heroes that are, quite frankly, probably villains in disguise. Do you watch sports through that lens with your writing background and your penchant for creating characters? Do you look at the characters in sports?
I do. I think America loves the underdog. So we don't like, except if it happens to be your dynasty.
Right.
We tend to not like dynasties.
Right.
I mean, when I was in college, it was Vince Lombardi and the Green Bay Packers. And if you were from Green Bay, you loved them. If you were from anywhere else, you hated Vince Lombardi and the Green Bay Packers and wanted to see them go down to defeat. And the Yankees in baseball. Of course, growing up, I was a baseball fan, but I was a Dodgers fan, a Brooklyn Dodgers fan. And all through the 50s of my childhood, like every year we met the Yankees in the World Series, and every year we lost until we finally won in '55, and it was glorious.
Yeah.
It was glorious because the underdog finally won. We finally we finally defeated. Well, Darth Vader and the Death Star didn't exist then, but it felt like
right.
It never defeat the Yankees and all that. But unfortunately, then 2 years later, they moved out of Brooklyn to Los Angeles and ripped out my heart.
Hey, Chris and George. 1955, one of the best years of my life. A lifelong Dodger fan, and you know what I went through before 1955. We kept getting beat by the Yankees. And then came 1955. I was 21 and a half years old, followed the Dodgers thoroughly, and then that wonderful day when they won the World Series. Johnny Padres, who I came to know pretty well later in life, pitched a magnificent game, shut him out 2-0. Sandy Ambrose makes that crazy catch in left field, turns it into a double play. And in the bottom of the ninth inning, when the Yankees came to bat, all of us Dodger fans said, they're going to win, they're going to do something. The Yankees always did something. And wacko, 2 minutes, the inning was over. And we won 2-0. There was the parade. I went to the parade. It was just a great moment in my life. 1955. 2 years later, I would move to Florida to break into broadcasting, and the Dodgers would move to L.A. and a whole new chapter in their existence. But there was nothing like Brooklyn and nothing like the Dodgers.
But a few years later, we got the Mets, and we started all the way over again from the depth of the thing. But still, it's a whole different experience, I think, being a Yankees fan or being a fan of the Golden State Warriors or New England Patriots. These teams that are in it every year. I don't know. I've never really had that experience. My teams are not in it every year. But every once in a while they're in it, like 69 for the Jets and the Mets, both in the same year. That was amazing. Tom Seaver on one hand and Joe Namath on the other. And, of course, the 86 World Series where the Mets defeated the Red Sox. I was at Game 6. Yeah. I still have my ticket there. So I was sitting in the fourth row on the first bet side when that ball went between Bill Buckner's legs. And the Giants' 2 Super Bowl wins, in recent memory, they were both amazing over the Patriots. And we were huge underdogs in both of those games, which made the win that much sweeter. I mean, the first time in Super Bowl 42, the Giants were a wild card team. They were on the road, and the talking heads on television picked against them in every game. They picked the Buccaneers.
Yeah, they were playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Then they picked the Cowboys to beat them in the divisional game, and then in the NFC Championship, they picked the Packers to beat them, and the Giants kept surprising them all the way to the win over the Patriots, and it was amazing.
It does remind me, and I asked Strahan at one point, I said, hey, Stray, who's the bigger underdog upset victory, the Eagles and the Patriots or the Giants and the Patriots? And I said, I would actually concede that you guys are far and away the bigger underdogs because you were 12-point dogs. We were like 8 to start the week, and it moved to 4. And we had a backup quarterback, yeah, but Nick Foles is kind of this guy that was laying in wait. And the one thing that y'all didn't do is you didn't come up with a mask. We had the dog masks. There was no mask. So there was no mask. Thank you for watching part 1 of the Fishbowl with George R.R. Martin. Part 2 is all about his origins, growing up in Bayonne, and how he got his start.